Hello, welcome back again to another Scrimba Live session, and I'm honoured today to be joined by Jermaine Jupiter, a tech recruiter who is going to be talking about CVs, and I've doubled my volume again. I think you love this. Tech recruiter who is going to be talking about CV. There we go, I've shut myself up. At least one of me. There's still the other one. Yes. So as I was saying, Jermaine is here to review your CVs and give you all the CV advice. So very excited you could join us, Jermaine. Thank you very much. Would you like to start by telling us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jermaine. My legal name is Jermaine Murray, but I prefer to go by Jermaine Jupiter. Because I build resumes that are out of this world. That's I just made up. I'm a tech recruiter and a career coach. And honestly, I look at probably anywhere from 30 to 100 resumes per day, wow. A number of different jobs. And I see a lot of mistakes. I see a lot of things that I would do differently. And so I help people make better efforts when it comes to making their resumes, their LinkedIn, and just generally speaking, how to kick ass in interviews and get a higher salary during negotiations. So everything that you learn here will be the first step into getting on a path to get your dream job.
Sounds great. Yeah. So if you're looking at that many CVs, you probably know what it takes to really get your CV to stand out. Can you give us a few tips on that?
Yeah. So first thing that you want to do and that we're gonna cover is you want to make sure that you are putting yourself in the seat of the person that's going to be reading your resume. For recruiters and hiring managers, like I said, we see hundreds of resumes per day. And in order for us to do our jobs, which goes far beyond just looking at resumes, we kind of have to consolidate that process and really, for lack of a better word, skim through them. Make sure that we get through the quantity more than we read for quality, right? It's kind of like a filter. And then at a certain point, you can slow down and properly, take some real measured, thoughtful approaches to a CV or to an application. But the quickest thing I would say is more often than not, you want to front load your resume. You want to make sure that you have all the interesting stuff in the first half or even the first third of the resume. So we'll go over that as we're going through our reviews. But one of the main things that you're going to see here is that I like to cut a lot of stuff out of resumes to make for a pretty condensed experience, right? Yeah. Just because you have a one-page resume doesn't mean you lack experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting, actually, because I was going to ask you, how far back should you go in your work history? It sounds like you're quite selective with things that you would put into a CV. Is there a rule for that?
Yeah. So a general rule of thumb I like to say is you want to spend, if the experience is older than 5 years, you don't want to make it a point of emphasis in your resume. The idea is, just think about it this way. We're in 2021 right now, right? 5 years ago was 2016. How different was the world?
Yeah.
Completely different.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to tech, right? So at a certain point, your skills become outdated from way back in the past. Now, if you've continually to grown and to improve upon your skills, it will be present in your present day skill set. At the end of the day, when you start going beyond 5 years, you're really just showing your tenure in the industry, right? And that has its own value, but you don't need to also build the successes of your resume based on stuff that you did 5 years ago.
Yeah. So when you talked earlier about front loading a resume, what are the things you typically would put at the top? Is it the work experience or is it something else, the skills, for example?
Yeah. So this is a great segue to kind of explain my methodology of how we're going to go over these resumes.
Yeah.
So when it comes to a resume review, I like to do things in 5 different parts or 5 different categories, right? The first category we're going to look at is the aesthetic or the visual presentation. Things like grammar, things like structure, things like, is it too long? Is it too short? And kind of things that a recruiter would see on their first skim and what would either be a good move or a bad one. Then we're going to look at your use of impact statements, right? Are you totally describing, the impact you had in your work environment? Are you articulating your value? Then we'll look at your use of keywords, right? Try to see like how well that you've used keywords, how well that you're actually placing things and being able to, more or less kind of tell a particular story about what you're doing with your resume. And then we're also going to be looking at, I like to say it's more of a holistic approach, but it's a theme, like the theme of your resume. As I mentioned before, everyone has a story. That's the most important thing about resumes and like basically the job search as well. It's like, how well can you tell your story? How well can you get people to relate to your story? And then finally, we're gonna look at how everything ties in together.
Sounds great. Shall we take a look at one?
Yeah, of course.
Let's do it. I will get one up here. So I have asked people to redact all the sensitive information. So that's why we've got these kind of mysterious names and cities and so on. But what did you think of this one, Jermaine?
So let's start off with the aesthetic version of it, right? Can you just scroll down throughout the resume? Let me just see how long we have.
Yep. So it's a 2-pager.
2-pager resume. And can we go back all the way up to the top?
Yep.
Awesome. So this particular person, I would say, so the first I should say impression that I have is that I like that the resume actually jumps straight into the nitty-gritty stuff, right? We understand what this person has done in their current organization. And again, I'm seeing things like tools. I'm seeing things like, again, their history here. So it's good. I like it. One of the things that I'm not too particularly of a fan of is that it's right now it's too long.
Right.
I like to say that, as I said before, just because you have a 1-page resume doesn't mean you lack for experience. It's just how you're presenting it. My general rule of thumb is I actually don't like to cross over into a second page of a resume unless there's 5 years of experience that's there. And even then, I'm really, really selective of what we're putting in. So right away, the other thing that jumps out to me is that it's too long.
Interesting.
I would also say, like, for visual representation, and remember, as human beings, we place a lot of value on what we see with our eyes, right? And when it comes to the hiring process, whether it's interviewing, whether it's resume review, whether it's salary negotiation, impressions have a huge impact, right? So this is why how you present the information is just as important as what you're presenting. One of the things I don't like about this particular resume template or the way that the resume is outlined is that things look a little too all over the place, a little too loose. There doesn't be proper structure, right? So think of it like this. As I said, recruiters rely on skimming to get through the bulk of their resumes. So one of the things that you kind of do, you can do this activity yourself, is to just mindlessly skim through your resume and just naturally track where your eyes go, right?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting, actually.
Yeah. So this is why it's also important that we have a good resume template, because we want to guide the hiring manager's eyes to show them what we want them to see. And that's why I said you want to front load the resume, because if you think about it, when you're skimming, right, any skimming activity, take up a magazine article on the web, a Scrimba article, for instance, right? And just do this exercise of just skimming through it till you get to the end of it. More often than not, you only really remember 2 places of the things that you're reading. Stuff from the very beginning and stuff that you just read, right? So this is why I say that it's important that we front load our resumes and put everything that's useful at the top, because that's what's going to get retained. If we don't have a proper template and organizing our information, the impact is kind of going to get lost. At most, a recruiter might spend 10 seconds on your resume in the initial glance, and in that 10 seconds, they're not really being intentional with how they're thinking. They're just thinking of, I got to get through this resume as quick as possible. And then whatever impression I'm feeling at the end of it, that's the route that I'm going to go with. So aesthetic is important, because if you have bad grammar, or if you had improper formatting, if you have a bad template, these are things that will distract somebody in that 10-second span that you have in order for them to retain information, right? And literally the thought of, oh, this is a bad resume template can take up 3 seconds off that 10-second span, and you're not left with much to work with. So this particular template, again, kind of distracting because it's very loose and all over the place. Can you scroll down one last time?
Yep.
Another thing I don't like is that the skills are at the bottom.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, remember we want to front load it. So and I'll get more into this as we go on. You want to make sure that you place your skills at the top. Ideally, my favorite resume structure is name and contact information, skills, work experience, right? I'm not a fan of professional summaries. The only type of professional summary I like is like if you're experienced enough to have like key career highlights. But remember what I said, we want to front load it. So you want to put your skills at the front, and then you want to contextualize your skills with your experience right after. And that can all happen in that first half of the resume, and you can leave a strong impression on somebody. So by the time they get to the end, they are looking at either your projects or your education, but they have an informed opinion. Informed is, I use informed very loosely, by the way. Informed opinion of what you're representing in your resume.
Yeah, that's lovely. So what can this person do? Just a couple of quick points to help the aesthetic side of this. What would you recommend if you only had a minute to fix it, for example?
Honestly, one of the first things I would do is I would probably just go and look for a new resume template. There are websites that like Canva, for instance, where you're able to make resumes for free, right? Of course, we want to make sure that the information that you're putting in is also properly set up. But to fix your aesthetic, just look for a better template. You can use Canva, or you can use sites like Credle as well.
Right, that's a great tip. Yeah, so check out Canva for a resume template. I've got a couple of interesting questions in the chat, if I could just pop those to you.
Yeah.
Alan is asking, does having a picture make any significant difference, or would you avoid it? I guess this is something that varies from country to country, but what's been your experience of it?
It kind of varies from country to country. I'm seeing more on so in the West, in the Western side of the world, the general rule of thumb is that we avoid pictures. And as I said, the entire hiring process, the job search, interviewing, resumes, whatever, it's all an exercise in subjectivity and how you make that person feel on your first impression. Like I said, we're human beings, we're faulty. We place a lot of value on what we see with our eyes, right? So a lot of times, when you put your picture on your resume, unfortunately, people suck. People will judge you by your picture, and that will color their whole opinion of your resume, right? Whether they find you attractive or not, whatever, what they're judging you on isn't what you want them to judge you on, right? And everyone has their own internal biases that they have to overcome. My line of thinking is, let me just put these solid facts in front of you, and then when you meet me face to face, right? If you don't like me, you don't like me. But at the very least, I'm better positioned to overcome any biases that you may have, because you're already working with just the raw information of what I can do from the start.
Yeah, great tip. Thank you for answering that one. I do have another question from Umar, which is an interesting one. As a beginner with not much experience, can I add a hackathon as a work experience?
I would say yes and no. So if you're participating in a hackathon and it's like a true blue competition, like, they were saying, like, come join our hackathon competition 6 months prior, you went, you won, or you placed really well, I wouldn't even put that as an experience. I'd put that as like an accomplishment or as a highlight. If you're talking like you went to hackathon as a boot camp, then no, you wouldn't be able to put it as an experience, because it would be more as your education. As somebody without any experience, the stuff that you would rely on would be projects that you've built or participated in. I always say that for newcomers into like the tech space, especially development, the best thing that you can do for yourself is to connect with people that are also in that space and work as on many projects as possible. The more complex and complicated the project is, the better for your resume. There's a difference between between basically reskinning Instagram and saying that's your app and creating like a book depository with like a machine learning aspect where depending on what books you select based on your profile, it'll recommend something to you. You see the difference in complexity? That allows you to know, it's like night and day. That allows us to know, like, you actually, as an early beginner, you actually can see and conceive of complex ideas in this space.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I have just dropped the 2 links that Jermaine mentioned about CV templates in the chat. There's Canva and Credil. Is that? I don't know how to say that.
I misspelled Credil. There's no I in there.
No I. That makes sense. Yes, there we go. Lovely.
Yeah. Both free resources. Credil especially is really good because it brings you up to a type form. You just copy and paste the information in, you select the template, and it automatically builds one for you. Awesome.
That sounds very handy. Yes. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes, we can.
All right. Here we are.
So next one, we are going to, so what I'm going to do is, in the interest of time, we'll just jump into different categories for different resumes.
Yep.
The first one was aesthetic. This one, we're going to focus on impact statements. High level, like I said, I'm not a fan of the professional summary, but when it's nice and condensed like it is here, it can work. It's okay.
Yeah. Couple of sentences,
right?
Yeah.
So I do like that they have, they've listed self-directed learning projects. Another way you can kind of display your projects or your experience if you're freelancing or consulting is kind of just brand yourself as your own like consulting business. A lot of developers work on side contracts, side projects, and they end up having to like create a business or an incorporation entity anyway, and like people name them whatever it is, right? But the great thing about that is that you can consolidate your experience and like give yourself like your own job title for like the job that you're pursuing. So, for this person, for instance, let's say that their name is Dawn, right? You could brand your self-directed learning projects as apps by Dawn, right? And you can put yourself in as front-end developer. And then you could just list it as you do here. So I like the projects, Netflix. Can you just scroll down a little bit? Let's see if the professional experience.
Yeah.
So commercial underwriter. Okay. All right. And sorry, let me see the bottom. Let's see what education is. And volunteer. All right. Let's go. And if you don't mind going all the way back up, Leanne.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know I'm very bossy. You're great. So, okay. So when it comes to the experience, I want everyone, when you're writing out, so before we talk about impact, we get into your actually impact statements here. I want you guys to I want to share with you my format for writing impact statements and kind of how I view impact statements on resumes. So I always say that there are 3 components of experience that can paint the picture of how somebody that doesn't know you can understand what you're doing in a work environment. And more often than not, a hiring manager isn't going to know who you are or even the company that you worked at. So it's up to you to kind of paint that full picture. I have an acronym that I follow that a lot of people in recruitment and CV writing follow as well, called PAR, P-A-R, which stands for Problem, Action, Results. You might have heard its companion STAR, which is Situation, Task, Action, Result. For PAR, it's shorter and straight to the point. Problems, Action, Results. So whenever you're writing out your, especially for like projects work, when you don't have much experience, whenever you're writing out, detailing the aspects of the project, you want to keep problem, action, results in mind. Make sure that the stuff that you're writing down clearly communicates what problem this project sets out to solve. The action part talks about like the solution that you built out, right? technologies that you've utilized, but also what in theory does the solution do in order to address the problem. And then finally, what is the end result? End result being like a faster experience for the user, end result being like they're able to categorize things and they're able to like make a better decision, better quality of life, happier experience. There's an end result with every action. And when it comes to projects, what is the benefit to the user? And that's the one thing I want you to focus on. So let's go into this person's resume. If you don't mind going up to the top, actually.
Yeah.
So another thing, which we didn't get to cover in the last resume because that was another thing that they did really well. They focus on just having relevant experience, right? This is a 2-page resume, and half of it has to do with nothing to do with software development or the job at hand. Now, if you were going for a job that was like a consultant firm that did a lot of client facing, you could leverage any client facing experience that you've had, as an underwriter or working in insurance, but you still wouldn't dedicate like a whole second page to it. It would just be like 1 or 2 lines. So that's the first thing I want to point out. So I would have actually just deleted everything that is under professional experience because it's not relevant.
Wow.
That's the way to make the resume 1 page.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting.
If you could jump up to the projects now.
Yeah.
So let's take apart the Netflix one. Reverse engineer the Netflix front end. Recreate a fully functional Netflix user-facing front end, complete with user authentication, video playback, and search capabilities. Okay, so right off the bat, I actually like the way that this person has come out and described their project, right? Keeping the PAR statement in mind for the problem aspect. The problem doesn't have to be directly painted onto the experience. It could be implied, right? But you definitely want to make sure you're clearly communicating what the action and what the result is. So this person has done a really good job in articulating like the action end of what they're trying to build out in their solution. Because it's a Netflix clone, we don't necessarily have to worry about what problem it's trying to solve. But if the person did say like, create a Netflix clone and rebranded it as my own thing to, make a new business unit or just to make a better curated experience because they find Netflix is too overbloated, that would have sent off like a light bulb in a recruiter or a hiring manager's mind because it's like, oh, this person is thinking of ways to improve an app. But that's missing. So, think of that in the future. But that's okay. I liked how they said that they reverse engineered it, right? Because that sounds so much better than copying, right?
Yeah.
I understand that you were trying to recreate an aspect of a very popular app. Because it's Netflix, we don't have to talk about Netflix's impact, but nonetheless, kind of talking about like the scope of like your code of being able to handle that would be good as well. What you're missing here is end results. And this is kind of hard when you start doing like cloning projects because you don't have any way to really improve upon it, right? It's kind of like a copy and paste. So if you're going to do a clone project, for instance, think of ways you can do to enhance or make it a different experience, right? That way you can kind of deviate it. Because there a lot of hackathons or a lot of boot camps for their curriculum, they rely on like cloning projects. So you also have to realize that the impression that somebody get as you're reading it is like, does this person actually know how to do this, or are they just copy and pasting from the curriculum? Which is another reason why you also want to add in some sort of enhancement, right? Either in the code itself or just an execution of like what the ideal is. And like I said, if it's Netflix, like think about it from like a product standpoint. And that's another important thing that us as developers have to realize. People want you to understand what makes products work and what doesn't, right? So if you're using Netflix, again, Netflix is super popular, and everybody that has Netflix has said to me one way or the other, they feel like it's bloated right now. They feel like there's too much going on, there's not enough interesting or compelling content anymore, right? So right there is an opportunity for you to say like, clone Netflix, but made sure like there was a more curated experience that limited suggested videos to just 10, right? Made it easier on the consumer to make a choice on what to choose to watch next. And there's a quantifiable end result that has nothing to do with the code, but holistically shows how you're trying to improve an application.
That sounds great. If anyone out there wants to build that, yeah, do it.
Yeah, if anyone out there wants to.
Be lovely.
Let me just also just check out the rest of this as well, just high level. So yeah, this person kind of followed the same methodology that they did with the Netflix clone, where you're again detailing really well like the actual process and the tools you use to build it out, but we're missing the why, right? And that's that complexity and that depth of thinking is what will set you apart from your other peers that are also just trying to break into the industry. So a lot more high level thinking in terms of like concepts and just how to improve things. Because again, when we think of yourself as a developer, think of yourself as a problem solver first and foremost, right? You're looking for problems to solve, and the code that you use is literally what you pick up in your toolbox. Remember what we just said about the world changing in 5 years? Don't be surprised if the tech stack that you have now is completely different from what you're using 5 years from now.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if it's not.
Yeah.
So I suppose this question ties into what you said earlier regarding this person's unrelated experience. Is that always the case, that if you've got experience from a different field, you shouldn't put it on? Or are there times when you might mention it?
Yeah, most definitely. So realize that in like tech is very nuanced in itself. Even like the hardcore coding jobs, there's some nuance there. I always tell people that when you're going into an interview and somebody says, tell me about yourself, what they're really asking for is for you to obviously high level tell them like why you're interested in like the industry that you're working in, but to also establish some sort of crossover between either why you want to work here. And that could look like you're interested in the product, right? The product itself. You're interested in the technology, or you're interested in the people, the team behind the product, right? So like think of Facebook, for instance. Facebook represents all 3 points of those interests and why somebody might want to work there. So it's like, I want to work there because of the product and like the industries it's disrupting and impacting, right? Or I want to work there because of the team, or I want to work there because of the technologies that they're using. So if we go back to this person and they're in insurance, like I mentioned before, if they're going for a role or they're going for a company that is all about customer success and customer service, or the product's about making customers feel great about using it, then the experience that you can pull is something that's relevant around that customer success, customer happiness, customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
That's relevant. But it would still be limited, and it wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't be worthwhile to make it, again, an entire page. I wouldn't go beyond 2 points to be honest with you.
So mention things which are relevant, but keep it short.
Correct.
Like. Yeah. Interesting. On the topic of keeping it short, got Julie asks, if you recommend keeping it to 1 page, how can you basically keep it that short? Do you recommend bullet points or a short summary, or is there a technique for doing that?
There is a technique, and it's not a technique at the same time, which talks about like how weird humans are. So my rule of thumb is that you have to look at like use of white space, right? It's very easy to make a 1-page resume that is bloated and hard to read because you either like reduced font size or you did your best to squish everything into that page, right? And it becomes almost straining on the person that's reading your resume to read through your resume. So we want to make sure that we're making sure that the resume and the information that's displayed on the resume is easy to read with enough space in between it. Whether you want to go through paragraphs or you want to do through bullet points, that's up to you, as long as you're making sure you're capturing relevant information and adhering to those PAR principles that I mentioned. Again, always think about it from a skimming standpoint. When you go through your resume, is my resume easy to skim? Is it easy to read and skim and retain information? And that's the most important thing. So like I said, use of white space, you kind of have to do like an eyeball test and say to yourself, is my resume a pain to read?
Could also show it to someone else, I suppose, like your partner or a good friend.
Yeah. I would say try to find a stranger, to be honest with you. A couple years ago, my partner is the one that taught me this rule about white space. It was a horrible situation. It was a 6-page resume. I only had 6 months of experience. And to top it off, each page was packed with content. Wow. And my partner like picked up the first page. She read half of it. She put it down and she's like, my eyes feel like they want to bleed.
Yeah.
And it's like, I love you and everything, but that was kind of harsh. And now I'm upset with you. So, you may want to go to a stranger because, someone that you love may just give it to you too honest, or they may not be honest enough.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
so
true.
Go to a stranger, hire a coach, get a third opinion, somebody that has no skin in the game. And you'll know, to be honest with you, more often than not, they'll actually confirm what your suspicions are because you'll know. You honestly will.
Yeah. I heard a phrase once, advice is what you ask for when you already know the answer but wish you didn't.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. Let's take a look at another one now. Got this one. Let me just zoom in. Come on. What do you... Crikey, I've found some... Oh, yeah, there it is. There we go. Zoomed in. Yeah. How about this one?
Okay. So high level, I like that it jumps straight to the point. Wish the skills are at the top. Remove the nationality, date of birth, and your sex. Again, you don't know what kind of biases somebody may or may not have. And literally the hiring process involves so many different people that you don't even know if like someone might have a bias against something in the early stages that somebody in the later stage that really matters won't care about.
Yeah, good point.
So for this particular portion, we're going to be focusing on skills, skills that you've chosen and the use of skills. So right away, red flag for me, there are no skills in the top portion of the resume. I really hope it's at the bottom. Is it?
Let's have a look.
Have a look.
Oh, here we are. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
My friend, you have buried your skills deep into your resume. There's a lot here that you don't need. I'll say that first and foremost. Yeah. The education bit is way too long. The language bits are okay. But really, because they take up space, I would say only put them on roles that specifically say being bi or trilingual would be an asset. For skills, you want to, so where you're hovering over, Leanne, professional skills.
Yeah.
Those are the most important skills that somebody will want to focus on as a developer. And like a really good exercise that you can do is to go through a job description and try to highlight all the skills that they're asking for, but like the most important things, right? This is a good exercise for you because you want to make sure that you understand exactly what the job posting is asking for so that if you need to go and tweak your resume, you can tweak your resume accordingly. You want to see really what they're asking for, but also you want to be able to connect the dots between the job posting and yourself. Ask the question, why would somebody want to hire me for this role that has nothing to do with my personality or my looks, just my skills, right? Because you're an awesome person, and that's how you get in as a referral. But you can't really paint your awesome personality on your resume just quite yet.
Yeah.
So first red flag, skills are at the bottom. This is a 3-page resume?
Oh, yeah. I didn't notice that. Yeah. Well, it's really just over 2.
Yeah. It's over 2, but you see how in the little corner it says page 2 out of 3?
Yeah.
It's a 3-page resume.
What do you want? No.
Yeah. So right away, like I said, we would take out, like, we would condense a lot of what you have going on here in terms of like your educational background. But also we would focus the skills first, prioritizing like the technology based ones. But also, again, we want to analyze what the not only job posting but the company is offering, right? So we want to look at product. Did you have any experience with the product from a customer side or even like from a competitor side, something similar? We also want to look at like the industry the company is in as well. So I noticed that this person has a Bachelor of Laws, right? Law or legal tech is a budding industry right now across the globe, right? More and more lawyers are falling into like, more and more law firms are investing in their technology aspect. So exactly, you're starting to see the picture. So if the way companies love people that allow people to transition into the industry comes down to whether or not those people can understand how that company makes money through its customers, right? And if you are a developer who has a background in law and you apply for a developer position with a company that specializes in servicing lawyers, then I would say you're uniquely equipped to understand the mindset of the people that they're trying to make money off of, right? So that is when I would start incorporating this kind of stuff into my resume from a skill portion, right? You know, kind of add a little bit of flavor. Oh, there's a little mix of like legal subject matter expertise here, backed with some really strong technical foundational skills. And the same thing can go with it, because this person has had a very, very diverse background. I love it. You've tried everything. You know, you've done some stuff in the financial institution. So like, think of it like that. If you worked in finance and you're transitioning over to tech, you know, that experience that you've had just working in the workplace in finance is still really valuable, right? There's still value to it that you can bring over. It's just that you have to identify between the posting and the company itself, and even sometimes the team or the people involved, like what parts are most valuable, right? Was it customer service in the financial sector and the financial setting that they value the most? Or is it the fact that you have subject matter expertise on how loans get processed? You know, a lot of different aspects. If we can go back up to the top and let's look at the skills portion a bit more holistically. So one of the reasons why I like to put the skills at the top of the resume is because this might sound a bit manipulative, but because I know that recruiters and hiring managers are skimming resumes, I want them to have an idea of the technical skills that they're going to see and encounter before they start encountering it. So think about it like this way. We're skimming our resume. You know, we come across this person's skill chart at the top of the resume, and we see Python, HTML. Let's go with just Python and HTML and CSS, right? And those are skills that we're looking for in our job posting. So right away, I'm like, okay, this person has those 3 core skills that I'm looking at. We're off to a great start. Now, the killer is when you go into your experience, you contextualize how you use those skills in the workplace. Remember how I said in the last bit, you want to use PAR, problem, action, results. The skills would come in the action portion when you are detailing how you built out your solution to address that particular problem, either on the project or in the workspace. Now, again, think about it from the skimmer's perspective. All right, the first impression I got, this person has the skills that I'm looking for. The second impression I got, this person has just explained to me how they've used the skills that I'm looking for in a professional workplace. And now I understand how good they are in some form with those particular skills as well. Another thing I also want to point out, and maybe it's because, you know, we asked them to remove information for identity privacy purposes. If you're a developer, especially if you're a new developer, I cannot stress this enough. It is of the utmost importance that you have a portfolio of some sort, right? Portfolio that showcases your projects, but in the form of a portfolio, but also there should be one or two case studies that really break down your project. And the case studies serve to show that you have an understanding, like an actual understanding, a fundamental understanding of how tech actually works, of how these products can impact the lives of the users, right? The case study helps because it explains, especially if you're new and you're headlining your own project, it explains the thought process and the decision-making process in line as to why you made some decisions with certain applications. If we were to add in like the Netflix clone from the last resume, right, as an example, having a case study to break down why, you made sure that the curated list didn't go past 10 selections because users have expressed X, give someone the impression that, like, when it comes to tech, you're that much more thoughtful, that much more able to think outside the box, but you understand client pain points, and understanding client pain points mean you can service them, and being able to service them means you can charge them, and being able to charge them means that the company can make money off of them, right? And that's how we want to build value. So the reason why, to tie this all back in this specific resume, the reason why it really, really sucks that their skills are all the way at the bottom of the resume is that I can't just glance right at the top to see what skills that they've highlighted and to confirm what I'm looking for. So I have to individually read through each and every line to see what skills this person has that's relevant to me. And the unfortunate thing is as well, your resume really didn't need to be 3 pages, my friend, because the rest of your experience here, unfortunately, isn't really relevant to software development. Now, and like I said, you have a very diverse background, which is actually a really good thing, and is an underappreciated asset. You just got to be more intentional on where you're applying to ensure that you can leverage that existing experience, right? Because you can rebrand this whole thing as you're going into software development, you're using Python, HTML, you have a few interesting projects, you have a portfolio that has a bunch of projects that you've worked on, but also a couple of case studies to show your thinking. And then you've also highlighted, you have exposure in legal settings, working with lawyers, you understand how they think, right? Whether because you were a lawyer before or because you were an EA to a lawyer or a paralegal, right? That could all fit on one page, and that can make for a compelling argument or a compelling application if you were to apply to a law company that was looking for a junior engineer working Python, right? Because of the subject matter expertise is literally a bonus, right? But it's such a well-crafted, unique bonus that it's a card that you have to play in that setting.
That's interesting, actually, because some people in the chat are asking if you should have a new CV for every different application. So it sounds like if this person was applying to a legal company, they could expand a bit on their legal experience and maybe shorten or leave out the banking experience.
Exactly. I would like to say, so I have a general rule of thumb when it comes to that. You make a resume for each unique skill set that you have or point that you want to emphasize, especially as you go further along in your career. Like I said, 5 years from now, the stacks that you're working on may not even be the stacks that you're working on today, right? So, but especially if you're like someone that has a lot of soft skills and like a diverse background like myself, I would have a different resume for each different role I was going for. So if I was going for a software engineer role in the fintech space, I would have a resume that has my software engineer stuff, but emphasizes like that fintech aspect. If I also had the background to go into like the law space, I would have one for the law space. And if I had one for the media space, I'd have one for the media space. But I wouldn't create a brand new resume from the ground up for every single role I'm applying to, right? Yeah. You only really want to do that if it's for like your dream job. And I think I said this on our last broadcast too, with regards to cover letters. I don't write a cover letter because it takes a lot of effort, and I always make sure my cover letters are customized from the ground up for the application and the role. And honestly, I'm only willing to give that much effort to PlayStation because I always want to work at PlayStation. I'm a gamer, right? But no one else is going to get a cover letter from me because no one else makes me excited to work for them like that, like PlayStation. So it's kind of the same thing here. Don't exert yourself. Don't spend all your energy crafting resumes from the ground up for each application. Do it at a high level. If you know that you have a couple of different skill sets that you can focus on, build a resume for each skill set, right? And then use the right resume for the right kind of job.
Yeah, that sounds very sensible. I've got an interesting question here from Mahida. I have a failed e-commerce business. How can I mention that if I need to? So I suppose there's two sides to this. Is mentioning what you actually did could be beneficial to you. And also, if you don't mention it, you're likely to have a career gap in your CV, which is going to get asked about. Yeah. So how do you tackle something like this?
Oh man, this is actually a really cool thing. So the first thing I want to address is the implication. I feel like there's an implication here. Never be afraid of your failures, right? I like how you characterized it with failed e-commerce business. Listen, it takes a lot of guts to launch a business. E-commerce, brick and mortar, service-based, it doesn't matter, right? It takes a lot of guts. And there is a lot of value in that. I would say it comes down to what your experience is like. Gaps to me are overrated, right? We just addressed eliminating anything that's not relevant to the job, and for a lot of people, that's going to create a lot of gaps. So I don't put an emphasis so much so on the gaps. Now, if you were applying to and just a heads up, e-commerce business, e-commerce experience is one that is vital to a lot of people that are in the e-commerce space, right? So the fact that you have that exposure in that market, you know how it works, is honestly amazing in and of itself. So don't undersell that. How I would mention it. So remember how I said that when we're trying to what's the word I use? When we're trying to brand our freelance experience, I said that you kind of want to give a name to a consulting business to kind of slide everything under. You can definitely do it that type of way. You can brand it as, you can brand it as this was your own consulting service, and each e-commerce platform was either its own portfolio, project, or customer, right? You were still responsible for, you were still held accountable for performance metrics. It doesn't matter if you're being held accountable to yourself. And with that said as well, the other aspect is that you can list each e-commerce business as its own entity and its own business with its own experience, right? That could make for a bit of I want to say dense resume, right? And adhering to what we talked about in terms of white space might not be the best way to frame it, but there are ways for it to work. Do you have to mention it at all? No, you do not. Do I think it would be worthwhile to leave off? No. I especially when it comes to just how much flexibility you have in what you do for an e-commerce business, there's a lot of value that you can pull from that. I don't know if you're using Shopify or if you built it from the ground up or if you use WordPress, but like I said, there's a lot to work with.
Yeah, Jeffrey Cohen says it nicely. Emphasize the successes you achieved.
Exactly.
I think that's absolutely great advice. I'd like to look at a few more CVs.
Of
so
course.
Do you mind if we kind of do a bit of a quick fire round?
We'll do a quick fire
on the CVs? Yeah, let's have a look. I think this is the next one on the list. Hosted on GitHub.
Okay.
Quite nice. Yeah, what do you reckon of this one?
So can you just scroll through?
Mm-hmm.
Keep scrolling. How long is this resume? Okay.
That's the end. Yeah.
That's the end. First impression, it's a nice looking resume.
Yeah.
I like the colors, I like everything. Things that concern me about the resume. So I've never been a fan of what I like to call as a vertical split in your resume. This one's more segmented, but remember what I said about when it comes to skimming. Naturally, when people read, they like to read left to right. So what may end up happening is that you may guide somebody's eyes to read the left side of your resume up and down, or like in a U, rather than from left to right. And remember what I said, we got 10 seconds to work with. So naturally, again, my eye starts with the left side of the resume, the colored side. And I would have gone through, if you don't mind scrolling up a little bit, Leanne, we would have gone through the links, which is awesome. Love to have the links at the top. That's exactly where it should have been. When it jumped to skills, awesome. But then I would have jumped to, I believe, education. And then I would have jumped down to the bottom to see what's there. And then you see that there's nothing there. So then you scroll all the way back up to the top.
Yep, that makes total sense.
And then I start from here and then I start reading down. My attention span in that 10 seconds has already been used up, right? So that's why I like the left to right as opposed to the vertical. In terms of Microsoft support specialist, so this is an interesting one. Now, the role itself isn't really relevant to software development, but Microsoft is a tech company. So if you emphasize just customers' interactions, that would have been great. I assume most of your projects are on your portfolio, which I understand, but you're kind of playing yourself because it's not a guarantee that somebody's going to jump to your portfolio, right? So you want to put a project or two, probably like your best or most complex project, on the actual resume itself. And then if they want to search for more, if they find it interesting, they'll jump to the portfolio. Also be mindful and careful of the social medias that you put out there. You know, Twitter, I find you have to be really intentional about when you're using, because people can see everything from like your retweets to your mentions to your likes. So even if you're not tweeting stuff that's problematic, if you're liking stuff that, you know, might not be the best look from a professional standpoint, people can see that. So be mindful of that. LinkedIn is LinkedIn, and GitHub should be there. Your website and your blog, I feel like, could be consolidated, but there might be a difference there that I might not be aware of.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point about Twitter. But even if it's not on your CV, people might look for it anyway. So watch that one. Yeah, I should say we've got Michael's name and some other bits on here. I did ask him before the stream if he was okay with me showing that, and he was. So that's the reason why they are on there, if anyone's wondering.
Thank you for that, Michael. I appreciate that.
Yeah, very nice. Got another one here. Yeah, what do we reckon of this?
It's colorful.
Lights. Yeah, I like the detail.
And purple is one of my favorite colors, so we're off to a good start, I guess.
Okay, well, hopefully it will load soon. Let's look at it on this one, and yeah.
Okay. Do you mind just zooming in, I guess? Excellent.
There we go.
Okay. Professional profile, I would remove because especially like this is a one-page resume, and because the resume relies a lot on open space, which is good, even though too much open space could be bad. The professional profile takes up way too much space, right? And the specializations themselves are enough where it's like, okay, you could just jump straight into the specialization and you wouldn't lose anything. Education, always put education at the bottom of your resume. Being, if education is important enough where it can make or break whether or not you can get considered for a role, they're obligated to actually go look for it. So you might as well look through the entire resume before you get to that point, right?
Good point. Yeah.
And you also, because this is a boot camp one, any education, you don't have to explain what the institution is or your particularly relevant courses, unless it's like unless it's like it's a super niche like cybersecurity. It's generally not worthwhile. Work summary, associate engineer. Okay. So one of the things that's standing out for me on the work summary is that you're not following the principles of PAR here, right? You're not really talking about problems that there are no implications of the problems that you face in the workplace or outright detail of what they are. You kind of talk about your actions and like the tools that you used, but the thing that you're not doing is that you're not adding you're not adding results to the end. Now, what happens when you don't? This is what happens when you don't have imply or properly articulate what the problem is, and you don't have an end result, and you just have the action portion. Your experience reads more like responsibilities because you're not contextualizing how you're using your skills, right? So because they read more like a responsibility, it's almost like you're making the hiring manager read back their job description to them, right? Like I know, like an easier example is using like an executive assistant. Like I know that you pick up phones and phone calls. Like I know that you send emails, and I know that you help with scheduling, right? Why is that impressive? But if you're telling me that you answer over 200 phone calls per day in the first half of your day, you're responsible for managing the schedules of 6 EVPs across 3 different time zones. That sounds a lot more impressive, right? That sounds like you're telling me what's going on in your environment. The same idea and the same principles work here, right? You've talked about some of the technologies that you've used, but you're not really telling me how you use the technologies or why they matter in the workplace or like what the end results were. You worked with clients. I don't know if your clients were happy with the work that you produced. I don't know who your clients are. Don't be afraid to name drop clients either, right? If you have a resume that's publicly available on your portfolio, you can refrain from listing the actual client names and details. But when you're actually applying for a specific job, or if a recruiter reaches out to you and there's that element of privacy involved, you can send a resume that clearly details what your clients are. This helps because there's a recognition factor involved. And if you're dealing with some like really big brand clients, the how that person perceives that organization, like a Nike, for instance, let's simply like, all right, that's a big organization. You know, they have certain standards that have to be in play. And that's kind of what's projected onto your resume when you list who your clients were. It's also like a confidence thing. It's like, ask about me. My clients will be like, they'll tell you they love me. Like, here are their names. And of course they most likely won't, but it does help in terms of how they perceive and feel about your application. So, and then the other aspect is community manager. Yeah, it's not really relevant here. So I would take it out. And here are the skills and expertise at the bottom. But these aren't even relevant skills to like software development. We want to make sure that our skills are super niche, but they're actually super relevant to that particular industry or vertical, right? So I want to see you talk about methodologies, agile or waterfall. I want to see you talk about, to technical tools that you've used. I want you to talk about platforms. I want you to talk about, different types of like product or project management. Like I'm looking for those type of skills, and those are the skills that you could find on the job description that you want to pull from as well. And please get rid of references. You don't need it on any resumes. They know that if you want the job and they ask for references, that you're going to give them references.
Yeah. Great tip. Yeah, I'm conscious that I booked you for an hour, and an hour, unbelievably, has passed. Jermaine.
Already? This always happens with Scrimba.
I can't believe it.
Are there any last minute questions that I can answer before we end off?
Well, there was one actually which caught my eye from Katniss. This person had a job which ended badly after a short amount of time, and they're now afraid to include it on their CV. What's your advice in that situation?
My advice in this situation is never be afraid of putting any job that you've had on your CV, and just be upfront with it. Like Like, I'll be honest with you guys, I've gotten fired before. It's quite possibly one of the most embarrassing experiences you could have in your life. The worst thing is how you beat yourself up over it, though, right?
Mm.
You find that you care more about it than other people. People understand that things just don't work out. If someone asks, why did you spend such a short time here? I would just easily just say, you know what? I worked in that environment and I realized that I wasn't the right fit. It wasn't the right fit for me or for what I'm looking for. And I'm just and it's actually the reason why I left. And I'm trying to be intentional about the next environment I put myself in. Yeah. Saying that right out the bat totally eliminates any questions, right? It doesn't matter if you quit. It doesn't matter if you got fired. You acknowledge that it wasn't a right fit for you, right? People quit toxic work environments all the time. People get fired from toxic work environments all the time. Mm-hmm. It's not a big deal. So I would list the experience. I would, especially if it's relevant, and I would not be afraid of the short tenure there as well.
Good to know. Yeah, that's very good advice. And one final one, if you don't mind. Jeffrey says, do recruiters care about certificates such as AWS?
Yes and no. So when it comes to certificates are kind of backwards. I'll give you a quick history. About 10 years ago, when certificates first came on the horizon, all you needed to do to get a job in tech was just to grab a certificate and go through the boot camp. There weren't enough people on the market for anyone to be too picky about. Of course, that hit mainstream, and now you have more people than jobs in certain aspects, right? So the certificates are no longer a benchmark of like actually getting a good quality hire. The way that certificates work now is if you do your own projects, if you've worked in a workplace where AWS wasn't your main function, but you ended up doing a lot of AWS projects anyway, getting the certificate solidifies that knowledge and that experience, right? The ideal combination would be some sort of experience combined with the certificate, because what the certificate says is that you can recreate the success you had in that prior environment in a new one. I hope you guys aren't hearing the police sirens in the background.
No. Sounds exciting. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Thanks for clearing that up.
My pleasure. Always love joining the Scrimba family. You guys are awesome. And thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you as usual. And you really gave us lots of wonderful advice. So thanks very much, Jermaine.
My pleasure. Have a great one, everyone.
And you.
Bye.
Yeah, lovely advice from Jermaine there. Really enjoyed that. So now I'm going to have a look at the weekly web dev challenge submissions. I don't know how loud that is. It sounds awfully loud to me, but never mind. So the task last week was, the soundboard. Lovely. Let's have a look. We have a llama-tastic one from Alan. Alan has made, I think it's 3 now, submissions with this iconic llama. And the first one he did, he actually won with it. So he's put it in all of them since then, which I think is brilliant. But yeah, look at this cool effect when you hit, oh God, when you hit the button. I think that's lovely. And then we have, this one is quite something. Ambreen has made, I can't call it a sound board. It's more of a sound library. So you can select a category and then you have all these different ones below that you can choose from. Oh, look, sea tides. How relaxing is that? And there are loads of them. Oh, what's this? Oh, yes, very accurate tiger noise there. So that one's lovely. Is it going to stop? Okay, there we go. And Marley has made this a nice change of styling. I like the dark theme. And originally in the challenge, there were only these 6 options. Marley has added 2 more. This chicken and this dog. And I really like this sort of glowing effect behind the buttons. Lovely. And another stretch goal of the challenge was to stop the sound if you played another one. So let's give it a go. Marley has done it. Very good. And also commented nicely in the code. Great stuff. Yeah, this one is totally out of this world. See what I did there? And it even goes in with the theme of Jermaine Jupiter. So Maria has made a solar system, which is also, oh wow, I didn't see that before. Lots of information about the planets and sounds. Wow. I should have showed this to Jermaine. Which one's Jupiter? That one, I think. Yeah. Awesome. It's still going. I'm not sure how to stop it. Maybe I'm going to refresh. See, space noises. I tried to make one of these once. It didn't look as good as this. I used jQuery. At the time, I didn't know any better. Yeah, it definitely didn't look as good as this. And it went okay. They were revolving around the sun. You know, that's a good start for a planet. But then I tried to make them so you could speed them up to 2x speed and so on. And then I got a bit lost and then I left and made a page about rabbits instead. Ooh. Yeah, so that's very nice. Well done, Maria. It's quite relaxing to look at. Yeah, and then we have Dave, who has made another take on the stopping the sound challenge, I guess. He has added a pause button, which is very nifty. Yeah, lovely. It was nice actually because on Twitter, Dave said that he'd learned a lot about using audio in JS, or words to that effect. So that was nice to hear. Yeah, lovely. And next up is Oshka, who has added 2 extra sounds, this cheeping bird and this llama. If you wondered what a llama noise is, it's this. Yeah, awesome. Let's have a look at the JS. Ooh. I'm not really sure what any of this means, but it looks good. Lovely. And now we have Emily with a nice gradient background. If you know me, you know I love gradient backgrounds. And this cool effect when you hit that button. I really should stop pressing that one. Yeah, I really like that effect. It looks very cool. And lastly, we have Caffeinated Pixels. Best username ever. And they have swapped out some of the sounds and replaced them. So, okay. Awesome. I'm not going to press the alarm clock. I'm not going to do it. But yeah, I think that's cool. Super lovely. So let's open the winner poll. I'm looking forward to seeing who's going to win. So cast your votes. And in the meantime, I'm going to let you in on what the next challenge is. It's called Hungry Cat. And basically, you have to wire up the JS to make a little game where, after a certain period of time, I've actually set it in the duration as 10 seconds, but that's probably a bit too short. This cat needs to turn red because it's angry, because it's hungry. And then to make it not angry, you have to feed it by pressing this fish. So yeah, so cat feeding game. The inspiration was my own cat and Tamagotchis, if you remember those, giving my age away now, from the 90s. Yeah. So I look forward to that. If you want to change it, maybe you want to have a dog instead of a cat or a turtle, or maybe add some other functionality, that will be lovely to see. Yeah. Events coming up on Scrimba. Tomorrow is the weekly community meetup. Looking forward to that. And we live code the solution to the weekly web dev challenge on Fridays, usually. I'm not able to do it this Friday. So instead, Michael and I will be back on Monday to do it. And then we'll do it again, well, the next one, on Friday. So it'll be back to Friday as usual after that. It's just this week we have to switch it. So, yeah. And next Wednesday, we're having a similar thing to what we just did with Jermaine, but it's with Danny, and it's about your LinkedIn page. So he's going to be giving LinkedIn advice and, reviewing your LinkedIn pages live on the stream. And I will give you these links now. And if you would like your LinkedIn reviewed, that would be lovely. So just pop your details in there, and I will get through as many as I can on the stream. And of course, my weekly encouragement to you to join the weekly Web Dev Challenge. We now have 2,684 students enrolled. Awesome. Yeah, that's basically everything. So let's start the old timer. One minute to go. Yeah, so I hope you have fun with the cat game. Let me know in the chat what you're planning to do with this awesome Tamagotchi themed game. That would just be so cool. Ooh, Florian says, Danny, my boy. Yeah, yeah, good bloke. He's been doing quite a lot of things with Scrimba lately. It's very nice. Yeah. Oh, Michael Rocker says, cool, the challenge is like making a gigapet. Yeah, basically, it is. An SVG pet. That was an interesting experience, figuring out how to change the color of these. It's easy enough to change the color, but I needed to change it in the CSS. So yeah, had lots of fun and games with that. Oh, look, Catmus, Tamagotchis. Oh, that takes me back. Yeah, yeah, I know. Those were the days, eh? Michael says, that looks suspiciously like our cat. It does, actually. Yep, similar shape. That is the timer for the votes. So let's have a look. Who has won? Interesting. So I can now reveal that the winner is Maria with this. Which one is it? That one. Intergalactic Planetary Adventure and Soundboard. A well-deserved winner. Maria, you have won 6 months of free Scrimba and $50 off, Scrimba swag. And we also have a randomly selected winner who wins a free Scrimba Pro subscription, and that is Laffen. So Laffen, please reach out to me on Twitter and or Discord, and I will set that up ASAP. And yeah, I also had the extra questions. Which rodent has won? This? Ah, hamster. Lovely. Yeah, I like that hamster. I quite like the capybara, though. I'm quite surprised that's a rodent, because that's, pretty big, isn't it? And choose a space vehicle. This. I'm not sure what this is, because to find it on Unsplash, I put in International Space Station, but that just looks like a satellite to me. I'm sure Michael's going to tell me what it is now in the chat. And then, no, I went for this, the moon buggy. I was going to say that looks like something I might be able to drive, unlike a car, but it's probably more complicated than it looks. So, yes, that is it. PPSLP says, woohoo, indeed. And Michael says, nice one. Really lovely project. Yeah, totally agree. It's extremely cool. Ooh, interesting. Question on the topic of the next challenge. How many fishes can a cat eat? As many as you set it to. My idea was the time runs out and then you have to give it a fish and then it resets and runs out again. But if you want to do something else, go for it. Yeah, looking forward to seeing your results. Okay, well, I guess that's it for this week. Oh, yeah, actually, I will share this in the chat. And that has all the links which I've shared with you today. Oh, Sanchi. I would prefer a dog instead of a cat and would give it bones. Yeah, go for it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Maybe someone's going to do a dinosaur and feed it steaks. Yeah, the world's your oyster. I can't wait to see your cool designs. All right then. So I will see you all on Monday, actually. Yeah, have a lovely week.